A somber gray sky hung over the ruined southern village of Grisha as the party approached the cathedral. Talia knelt in the ash, her eyes shut. She felt it all. The blood, the sulfur rain, the echoes of screams the dirt had swallowed whole. She broke into a cold sweat, warning the others to stay vigilant. This was the site of an abyssal incursion. Corey, the human bard, pestered his brother William to enter the church, complaining about the rain. William, the human barbarian, wondered what would trigger his rage first. The monster responsible for this mess, or his annoying little brother? They cautiously entered the cathedral, but the structure offered no relief. The once beautiful cathedral was now covered in dried blood, mixed with the odor from the sulfuric rain leaking in through the cracked ceiling. As the party stepped over hallways lined with dead bodies, they found a runic summoning circle in the middle of the worship hall. Talia could spot the celestial nature of the runes, but something about them seemed wrong. A sense of sorrow could be felt from the latent magic itself. They descended further into the cathedral, reaching the lower chambers. Corey, eager to prove himself, offered to use his invisibility to scout ahead. The others agreed to explore the other chambers while they waited for him. As Corey went off, Talia and William made a startling discovery. Strewn about the lower chambers were mounds of dead bodies, bodies of humans and demons alike. Talia's breath hitched. Whoever, or whatever had done this hadn't taken sides. It had taken lives. Then suddenly, a mangled demon chuckled in a pained voice, making gleeful eye contact as it spoke dying words.
The gods have not saved you, child. They have doomed us all.
Elsewhere, Corey moved like a ghost through the corridors, his boots silent on the blood-slicked stone. He ignored the claw marks on the walls, and the bat-like wings splattered across the floor, humming a tune his mother used to sing to him during better times. He reached a chapel room. The stained glass above the altar was shattered, but what remained filtered the dim torchlight into the room. The light reached the floor, illuminating what first looked like gray oil. It was covered in a mass of feathers that curled up into a ball. He heard childlike sobbing in the room, immediately sneaking around the altar to find the source. He found a child shaking in fear behind the altar. Corey felt a surge of pity for the child as he turned off his invisibility, taking out his guitar as he did so. As he began to strum a comforting tune for the child, his brow raised in confusion as the child's face contorted in horror. The child was not the source of the sobbing sound. A golden glow began to fill the area. Elsewhere, Talia and William startled at the sound of Corey screaming in agony from within the chapel. They darted through the halls, freezing in place as they reached the chapel. Corey's limp body was suspended in the air, skewered on hundreds of glowing feathers that extended from the fluidic mass. Corey was bleeding fountains of blood. The child behind the altar shed tears as he mouthed the words, "Don't move." Talia was the first to enter the room. She felt tears cloud her vision. She wasn't able to warn William until it was too late. The shock caused William to yell out Corey's name, and that sealed their fate. Glowing feathers and sobbing filled the room as blinding pain enveloped their bodies. Demons were the least of their worries. Hello, and hello. I am the S.O.C.K, aka Oozy Goodness, and I'm back with yet another episode of Dude Brew. The 9th episode, actually. I'm pulling a little bit of a buzzer beater here since it's the last day of Ooze Week, but I got a cool idea for a creature last night, so I thought, why not honor Ooze Week with some more oozy goodness to traumatize your players with. On top of that, I want to put out just a whole bunch of content as we build up to the 100 subscriber special, so stay tuned for that. I'm working on the video, and it's going to be a special little project. But today for Ooze Week, I'll be showing off a homebrew creature I made called the Mourning Mass. I'm not going to waste your time. You guys know the deal. There's going to be timestamps in the video if you only want a specific part. But let's go over the oozy goodness I came up with. The divine oozy goodness, actually. Let's answer the first question of what is a Mourning Mass. Mourning masses are oozes infused with celestial energy and the remnants of angel wings. It glows with blinding light and emits faint, haunting cries from within its form that are similar to childlike sobbing. Mourning masses are usually stationary unless stirred by a nearby sound or the presence of undead and/or fiends in the area. These horrifying beings feed on sound itself, growing in size and lethality in response to nearby sound, as they attempt to eviscerate the triggering creature. Each feather is lined with thousands of microscopic barbs that pierce through armor and inflict agonizing pain as they stab the nerves of their victims. These barbs force victims to scream, allowing the Mourning Mass to grow even larger. They can also sense the presence of fiends and undead nearby, churning along in a straight line to vanquish the source of evil. The origins of Mourning Masses are a mystery to even the most learned sages. Some theorize that Mourning Masses are made from an angel's despair, a soul so burdened by shame that it tore its wings away and slowly rotted into its current form. Some claim that Mourning Masses are the smited remains of squadrons of fallen angels, their sheer will to atone and serve their duties spurring them on even after death. Others claim they're angels abandoned by their gods, forever waiting for orders, and reacting violently to any sound that is not their master's voice. Despite their horrifying nature, Mourning Masses exhibit a peculiar protectiveness for children. If a child makes noise near a Mourning Mass, it will coil around the child protectively as its glow dims. This trait, along with its largely stationary nature, make Mourning Masses an aggressive but effective guardian when encountered at shrines and sacred tombs. Some orders of clerics leave Mourning Masses underneath orphanages and places containing holy artifacts, believing their presence wards off evil forces. Mourning Masses display another strange behavior. They slowly, deliberately crawl towards temples, altars, or priests connected to the god they once served. Some sages believe this behavior to be a form of penance, remnants of their divine servitude echoing long after the soul has fled. Others claim that Mourning Masses are awaiting new assignments, and each temple they approach is a hopeful return to duty. Clerics have attempted to commune with Mourning Masses, though the creatures never speak or respond. In rare cases, these attempts at contact end in tragedy, with the Mourning Mass reacting violently to prayers that mimic, but don't perfectly match the voice of the god it once served. So, Mourning Masses are essentially just these oozes that are these celestial remnants of dead angels that still try to serve their duty even after death. Their bodies just churning along in an instinctive way, vanquishing evil and protecting the innocent, quote unquote, and everything, even though it's this like warped sort of thing where it will protect children, like the innocent of humanity and stuff, but it reacts to sound as if it's heresy, and this kind of ties into how you can use this in your game, so I won't delve too deep into it. But the actual origin of the Mourning Mass is the story here, as these things are basically just personified celestial grief almost, and it's just this kind of metaphor for lashing out, that sort of grief, making it so you lash out and everything. Like I said, that kind of goes into the story stuff, but that is the central identity of the creature, is that it's this mass of angel feathers that specifically just cause pain and eviscerate these things that are potentially like blasphemy to the, quote unquote being at play here, since they yearn for the instruction of gods and everything. So like I said, plenty of story potential based off of this, but just as far as what the actual creature is, it is a celestial ooze that still will kill demons and that sort of stuff, but it's very indiscriminate in its quote unquote justice and stuff. But we're gonna go ahead and get into the stat block for this creature. So getting into the stat block, the Mourning Mass is a large ooze celestial tag. It's unaligned, it has an armor class of 10, it has 136 hit points with a roll of 16 d10 plus 48. It has a 20 feet crawling speed, I guess. Walking speed doesn't really sound right for an ooze, but that's besides the point. It also has a fly speed of 20 feet. It's literally the picture, I don't know what it's called, but it's like from Smash Bros. If you've seen the game, where it's just this massive like angel wings and everything. This ooze is literally made from celestial remnants and angel wings and stuff, so I figured it made sense for it to be able to fly and have that celestial vibe and stuff. But getting into its ability scores, it has a 20 in strength, 10 in dexterity, 17 constitution, 2 intelligence, 12 wisdom, and then 6 charisma. For its saving throws, it has proficiency in Constitution and Charisma saving throws with a +7 to con saves and then a +2 to Charisma saves. And for its skills, it has Expertise and Stealth with a +8. So I'll kind of delve into it a little bit later when I'm talking about how to use this creature in your game, but I figured I'll probably just say it now. This is based off of a SCP called SCP-469, I think. It's called the Many-Winged Angel, where it's essentially this mass of feathers that reacts to sound, and so that was the inspiration for this creature. But yeah, for its stealth and everything, this is a creature that is an ambush type creature most of the time with the way that it's going to work. So you'll see how that is going to turn out and everything, but I just wanted to clarify that. That has expertise and stealth with a +8. And for its resistances, just like all oozes, it has resistance to bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing, or at least the way that I do oozes is they always have resistance to those. And for its damage immunities, it has immunity to poison damage, radiant damage, and then thunder damage. And for its condition immunities, it's the same laundry list of oozes and everything. I don't want to go through the whole list, but blinded, charmed, deafened, exhaustion, frightened, grappled, poisoned, prone, restrained. If you need to slow that down, just slow that on YouTube. But that's oozes are immune to pretty much everything. For its senses, it has blind sight of 60 feet and it's blind beyond this radius, and it has a passive perception of 11. Getting into its traits, it has Amorphous, which is just the usual ooze trait. It can move through a space as narrow as 1 inch wide without squeezing. It can also occupy the space of a creature equal to its size or smaller. And then for its next trait is called Divine Radiance. The Mourning Mass sheds bright light within a 30-foot radius from itself, and sheds dim light for an additional 30 feet. It can deactivate this as a bonus action. All creatures who enter or start their turn within 30 feet of the Mourning Mass must make a DC 17 Constitution saving throw or become blinded until the beginning of their next turn on a failed save. The light shines even in magical darkness. So this has that celestial vibe of like almost the biblically accurate angel vibe. That's actually the kind of vibe that the whole creature really has, is that it's a biblically accurate angel essentially. But yeah, no, if you enter within 30 feet of it and then you just look at this radiant light that shines, that, like I said, it pierces magical darkness. So that would be a really thematic thing to have, maybe like a shadow caster, you know, somebody who does like shadow, like darkness spell and everything in your party, and they try to cast darkness on it to make it so they're not blinded, and then you just describe as a DM it like dissipating the darkness around it and everything as it still shines and churns along and stuff. Next up is Divine Sense. The Mourning Mass is aware of all undead and or fiends within 1 mile of it. It knows the distance and direction to each creature. It has advantage on attack rolls against these creatures. It's literally the mass of, or the remnants of angels, so yeah, it has that still divine fury and everything. Next up is called Sound Absorption. If the Mourning Mass takes thunder damage, it heals HP equal to the thunder damage dealt. It eats sound, and like I said, if you know anything about SCP-469, you understand the inspiration behind it. But yeah, the more sound you make, if you hit it with like a shatter spell or something like that, or like a booming blade, and you know, things might not be going too well for you. But next up is Frightening Quickness. On the first round of combat, the Mourning Mass has advantage on attack rolls against any creature that hasn't taken a turn. Any hit it scores against a surprise creature is a critical hit. Like I said, this is an ambush type creature and everything, so it's going to deactivate its glow when it's in its dormant state, and then, you know, it's just this mass of oil and feathers. People aren't really going to be super suspicious of it most of the time, and then yeah, like, you know, once a person makes a sound, then it gets skewered by the feathers and everything. But that's the intended purpose behind it. Its next trait is called Sound Triggered Growth. It's kind of its signature trait here. When a creature within 60 feet makes a sound, such as speaks, casts a spell with the verbal components, attacks, or moves noisily, the Mourning Mass gains 1 sound point, with a maximum of having 8 at a time. These points last until the end of its next turn. It may spend sound points to activate Holy Plume attacks, and those are going to be detailed later, but yeah, like I said, it feeds on sound and it gets stronger with more sounds that you make in the area. So yeah, if you speak, you cast a spell that has like verbal sort of stuff with it, you attack something or move really noisily, so that, let's just say you're not making a stealth check and stuff to try to be quiet, then you just kind of, as the DM, you describe that the feathers are growing more and more numerous, and it's coiling and writhing as it glows even brighter. Its next trait is called Painful Feathers. Creatures who make physical contact with the Mourning Mass must make a DC 17 Wisdom saving throw. When a failed saves, nerves sting with agonizing pain. They suffer 2d8 psychic damage and are unable to speak or cast spells with the verbal components until the end of their next turn. In addition, the affected creature screams, granting the Mourning Mass 1 sound point if able. This triggers once per turn per creature. So yeah, let's just say it enters a creature's space, and this could potentially happen to 3 players. Let's just say it enters the space of 3 players and everything. They have to make that wisdom saving throw. If they all fail, these sort of like microscopic barbs pierce your actual nerves and pierce through armor and stuff, and that makes you scream. And so that in turn makes this creature even stronger as it's making you scream to make it eat the sound and all that sort of stuff. But next up is Barbed Feathers. At the start of each of its turns, the Mourning Mass deals 2d10 piercing damage to any creature grappling it or that it has grappled. It can't really be grappled, but I just kind of added that in there just because. I might need to take that out, but whatever. If it's grappling you, then it's these barbs and its feathers are kind of digging even further into your nerves and just like skewering you and everything. And next up, so this might be a little bit of a controversial ability, so definitely give me some feedback if you like this idea. But I was thinking of adding this to all oozes in the spirit of Ooze Week and stuff. This next trait is called Strange Form. The ooze cannot suffer critical hits. See, my reasoning for it is this. So a critical hit might be you landing a lot of, let's just say, a lot of force in the strike. But conceptually speaking, what's the difference between hitting an ooze in the center or like in the side? Like how do you kind of like describe you hitting the ooze in a better spot, which is what a critical hit is supposed to simulate and everything. Even if it's, you know, the sheer force of it, it's still you simulating causing a lot of damage to one area. But what's the difference with that? Like it's just, it doesn't matter where you hit it, it's an ooze. So I just thought it made sense that oozes can't be hit with critical hits, and that makes them really dangerous for characters like rogues that are usually so used to those types of features and everything. But I thought that would give it some sort of interesting sort of like gameplay and stuff. So definitely let me know what you guys think of that. And its last trait is called Regeneration. The Mourning Mass regains 10 hit points at the start of its turn as long as it has at least 1 hit point and 2 sound points. So this kind of also plays into the identity of the creature, that the more sound that you make, the more you're bolstering its sort of abilities and strength. We're going to go ahead and get into its actions here. These are probably my favorite section that I've worked on and stuff. I tried to make this creature pretty unique. But its first action is called Feathered Pseudopod, which is a melee weapon attack, has a +9 to hit, is reach of 5 feet. Like I said, with the last ooze, with the brine ooze, all targets within range for this attack. So it makes an attack roll against everybody within 5 feet of it. And on a hit, it deals 2d10 plus 5 bludgeoning damage, plus 2d10 radiant damage. On a hit, the target is grappled with an escape DC of 17. For its next action available, it can use Holy Plume attack. So to clarify, it's not a multi-attack situation, so it can either do Feathered Pseudopod or it can use any number of its Holy Plume attacks. So for Holy Plume attacks, the Mourning Mass can use sound points to use any of the attacks listed below. For the cost of 1 point, it can use Kneel. And Kneel is a ranged weapon attack with a +8 to hit, it has a range of 60 feet. It targets one target, and then on a hit, it deals 1d6 plus 4 piercing damage, and then 1d6 radiant damage, and the target is forced prone. For the cost of 2 points, it can use Trumpet. Feathers and Divine Sound shoot outward in a 60-foot line that is 5 feet wide. Each creature in the line must succeed on a DC 17 dexterity saving throw or take 2d4 piercing plus 2d4 thunder damage and become stunned until the start of their next turn. Next up, for the cost of 3 points, is Chalice. Choose one creature within 30 feet. A spiral of glowing feathers forms beneath it. The target must make a DC 17 dexterity saving throw or take 6d8 radiant damage and become restrained in a cocoon of feathers. At the end of each of its turns, the target may repeat the save to end the effect. This counts as contact with its feathers for the purposes of its painful feathers and barbed feathers traits. And for the cost of 4 points is its final ability called Ascendant Form. The Mourning Mass grows one size category, up to Gargantuan for a maximum. It lowers by one size category at the end of its next turn. While in this state, Strength, Dexterity, and Constitution scores increase by +2. All weapon and Holy Plume damage dice increase by +1, with an example of a 2d10 damage attack going to 3d10. So, kind of linking back to what I was going to say for all these Holy Plume attacks, I just kind of wanted to list them off first before I started going on rants and everything. So certain abilities might not seem that bad compared to like a lot of higher level creatures, but I want you to conceptualize one thing. So with the example here being Kneel for its 1 point attack, so let's just say it has 8 points at the start of its turn. So this is a nightmare scenario where you really have to foreshadow this creature's abilities and kind of communicate them to the party to make this interaction fair, because you have to heavily hint to them for them to stop making loud sounds. Like, that's not the way to defeat this creature unless you literally can just out muscle it, which I think it makes it a very interesting tactical sort of creature and everything, and that gets us how you can use it in the game. But like I was saying with the Kneel attack, ranged weapon attack, it has the +8 to hit and everything. So it's 1d6 plus 4 piercing damage, and then 1d6 radiant damage, which doesn't seem like a lot, but let's say it goes up a size category if it spends 4 points as well to grow to, I think, so it's large now, it'll grow to huge size. So at huge size, that's 2d6 plus 4 piercing damage plus 2d6 radiant damage. And I want you to keep in mind that if it has any points left over, it can shoot up to 8 points of the Kneel attack. So that's 8 ranged weapon attacks against whoever or one person. So let's just say its damage is 2d6 now in its huge form. It hits you 8 times. That's 16d6, and then I think that would be because it also goes to the 2d6 with radiant. That's a whole bunch of nerd shit that I don't want to get into. But you see what I'm trying to say. This creature gets a lot more dangerous the more sound that you make, and the more that it'll just keep growing larger and larger and just getting more and more powerful. So I thought that would be a really interesting mechanic, and we're gonna go ahead and get into how you can use this creature in your game. So regarding how you can use this creature in your game, I tried to stick to the classic idea of oozes being these like roaming creatures in dungeons and crypts. The actual lore and behavior of the creature is built around being this horrifying guardian that refused to die. It's one of those don't make a sound type creatures, or don't move or you'll die type of creatures, which is one of my favorite like monster tropes in horror. It's like those sort of thing where like the person's hiding in a locker or like hiding underneath a bed and they're trying not to make a sound, but let's just say they have like, you know, some sort of item in their hand and it's like slipping in their hand and it falls and hits the ground. And then yeah, like for this creature specifically, then these feathers start to grow and skewer everybody and everything. But I try to stick to that sort of idea for the creature, but there's lots of encounters you can engineer as a DM where the objective is to sneak past the Mourning Mass, or the masses if you want multiple in the room just to add tension. Maybe the environment itself is unstable and hostile, so you have to be stealthy and leap around without knocking a rock over or something, or hitting the ground too hard. It's definitely a monster that can build a lot of tension, as the DM keeps describing it writhing, like sobbing sounds increasing as it gets more and more deadly. Along with being a perfect dungeon crawl type creature, you could easily just use this as a minion for fallen angels to control, or potentially a fanatical group of clerics that controls one. I think it'd be pretty cool to fight a group of fallen devas that want to kill mortals, so they just fly into battle alongside these mourning masses, but that kind of gets into story stuff. For story ideas, like I said, a core aspect of the Mourning Mass is its backstory in your game. In your campaign, Mourning Masses could be the remains of abandoned angels, warped into corruption and madness after being forsaken by their god. Or they could be decayed remnants of slain angels that are cursed with foul magic. Imagine if an angel was so fanatical, so devoted to their god, that they started to think that only they alone knew how to truly serve their god. No other angel could possibly understand the connection they have with them. As this angel begins to corrupt from its madness, other angels sense this, and this fallen angel also knows they're aware of its new nature. So it gathers an army of like-minded celestials, being so devoted to their idea of good or their god that they wage war upon reality itself. They start hunting other angels, brutalizing them to the point of near death before using foul magic to warp their mangled bodies into mourning masses, trapping their souls in their body to make it so they just have to serve this will without having the actual mind or capability to do it of their own will, basically. These slain angels are forsaken by their gods for fear of what they've turned into, and this is the core behind the insanity-inducing grief of the Mourning Mass. This could also just easily be created or worshipped by mad priests, and the sky is kind of the limit for the nature of this terrifying creature, no pun intended because it has wings. But yeah, that's the actual appeal that I tried to make behind it, and I think that why ooze type monsters, or celestials specifically, are pretty cool when you get into like the cosmic aspects of creatures, is like the why behind it, like the kind of implied history with its behaviors and everything, and then its lore for it. So yeah, no, it's celestial grief personified, like I said earlier, so there's a lot of avenues you could take with that. I won't wrap you guys up too much more, but I hope you all enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe if you like my content. And yeah, peace.